All right, guys. So Austin lose their third game on the bounce against Nashville 1-0 at Stadium. This drops them to 11th in the Western Conference, just ahead of Minnesota and Dallas. But pretty much, let's get our quick little reaction about the game. What are your guys' like biggest takeaways from this game for Austin?
It's looking like these 8 road games are going to be catching up to them, and they're starting to have an effect on them. Um, but I mean, yeah, it just seemed like the same kind of like same old story. I've been kind of same thing I've been watching for the past 2 weeks. It just seems like just making too many mistakes. Um, And yeah, I think that's just costing them to play the way they want to play. But we'll see. And I think once this I know they got a tough matchup coming up, but I think once they start having home games and stuff like that, I think I'll start to turn around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For me, I think they're a team that, continues to deal with kind of the growing pains of an expansion season and also growing pains from trying to implement Josh Wolff's ideas on the pitch that teams have kind of figured out how to neutralize, and that's exactly what Nashville did in this game. And so if Austin don't learn how to, revert to other um options in terms of tactics or systems, then it's gonna be a tough time for this new team and in their first season in the MLS.
Yeah, I think, and I think it doesn't. I think you can notice on the coach, it's kind of starting to get to him, the pressure. Um, I saw his press conference after the game, and then the one he had today. He's talking about injuries, stuff like that, but there are questions being brought up about, will he change his tactics, or will he look to play a different way? And he said he's sticking by the system. He's gonna stick by it. He's gonna trust in it. And he's just gonna hope that the players that no, I guess that the players will he'll find the right players to play this positions that he wants to play. But I think he's already kind of figured out the starting 11. Um, that he wants to play. He said it himself, it's the usual ones that we see out there with just some
So
rest.
Danny Hosen
I
is a
think
starter in your
Yeah, so
eyes
but
I
do
for the
you
rest of
think
the season?
but do you think that's the correct starting 11 is like a more interesting question
mm,
there.
no, I don't think it's the correct one. I think he wants Hosen to work out so bad. Um, and I don't know whether it's like it'll give him like I don't know if it's like I don't know if it's a pride thing, but for it to be like, oh, like I can make this guy like look good in this system. This system helps everyone and stuff. But obviously that hasn't been the case. It's literally done the opposite. He's literally looked like absent out there. Like it's like he's not even out there. So no, I don't, and I don't think he's the right person. But we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully he'll experiment with this game coming up. Hopefully he's not as stubborn with the starting 11 that he wants to play, and he kind of tries figuring out different pieces.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oscar, kind of talking about that a little more. What do you think the ideal starting lineup for Austin is, and do you think Wolf is right here to try to keep a consistent starting 11 on the pitch, even though they might not be performing at their best right now?
I think I agree with him in that he should keep a consistent system. We've seen what happens when you don't do that, and we've seen what happens when you do that. In Dallas, he switched it up. Lucci has switched up, I think, one too many times. And we've seen the drawbacks as they have only 6 points after, I believe, 6 games, but they were projected to be a very solid playoff contender, which is not being right now. Then you look at Top Ramos, who has stuck with his system. He has stuck with his players, and you see the results where they're overperforming the projections pretty much everyone had on them throughout the year. So there's a benefit to what he's doing in terms of the what I would say the system, but in terms of the players, the difference between, for example, a Houston and a Dallas is that a lot of those players had been there the year prior, and you already have some idea of who's going to work and who's not. Like Todd Ramos didn't have to search too much to figure out whether Memo Rodriguez should start. He didn't have to search too far whether Oscar Bonilla Garcia should start. And then there's similar players for Lucci. Now for Austin, I think they've actually experimented a little bit too. They've been a little bit too conservative with experimenting with the starting lineup because I do believe, like obviously Hosen, he hasn't lived up to the expectations fans had of him. But you also have like other players like Redes, who I think is a starter, not in place of Stroud. I think Stroud is, in my opinion, the best right wing in the league, at least for his price and for what like Austin gave up for him, right? But then you can keep Stroud there. You can put Dominguez at striker, which I still believe is the best option they have with the players they have. And then you can start alternating Redes for Gallagher at the left wing because I believe both of them can play it really well and figure it out. I think those are the types of tests he should be doing instead of kind of being a little stubborn, like Javi said, and keeping Hosen only. But let's say he keeps Hosen, right? He plays 70 minutes throughout the summer until the transfer window opens up. My biggest concern is that he doesn't get a DP at striker. He gets a DP elsewhere. A DP anywhere would help Austin, but they definitely need him more at striker. And my biggest fear is that he'll have so much faith in Hosen that he sticks with it for the rest of the season. And I don't think they make the playoffs like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to go ahead here and kind of transition into a little bit more of like the game and what happened during the game. I think for me, it was kind of a game of two halves. In the first half, obviously Nashville were the better side and they were able to get a goal off of that. And then in the second half, Austin was the better side, but I don't think that was necessarily because Austin played better. I think it's because Nashville decided to soak more pressure and let Austin play their game, which for me is not good game management. I would have preferred Nashville to stick with their high press and kill out the game early in the second half. But either way, Nashville got the victory there. But I'm gonna go ahead and hyper focus a little bit in the first half and exactly what Nashville did to basically stop El Verde's buildup from minute one. They basically cut their progression up the pitch, which is the brand of football. You know, Austin likes to play. They like to play this possession attacking style of football. And Nashville's key to the game in that first half was Gary Smith's high press in like a 4-4-2 shape when out of possession. And so just to kind of give you guys an idea of what that looked like. So you can take the front two strikers, right? Forming what you could call like the initial engagement zone, or simply call it your first line of defense when out of possession. And these two strikers would often allow the Austin players time and space on the ball near the penalty area to stay somewhat compact and not give up like too much space in between the lines. And on top of this, Austin would normally like outnumber the press with the strikers like 3v2 because Alex Sweden would drop a little deeper to help the two center backs with like an outlet option. So normally you saw the strikers a little more, conservative when the two center backs were on the ball, and especially when Ring would drop a little deeper to provide an outlet option. But now, if Austin got the ball and you're going to have to like do a little bit of, I don't know, like kind of picture this in your mind. When Austin tried to get the ball in like a hexagonal shape area, like this is hexagonal like area created between the strikers, your two wide players, and then your two CMs. So that little area that they kind of like outline, if a player in Austin or an Austin player would get the ball in that area, that would trigger like Nashville's press. So it was a combination of like the strikers coming back to press, pressure from the outside wingers and central midfielders. They created this like trap where they would just collapse on the ball carrier with multiple players at once. And that's kind of why you saw Austin try to avoid the center of the pitch, because when they did try to play or build up through the middle, they would lose the ball instantly. And we saw that a few times in the first half, and Nashville would go ahead and like gain possession in a favorable area and then turn around and, get a scoring chance from there. So Nashville's pressing trap was extremely effective. Austin rarely played through the middle. And when they tried, like I said, Smith's side would just dispossess them with ease. So essentially, they kind of force Austin to try and build through its wide players. Now, when you press with this system, you want to force the play out wide because then you have the ability to use sidelines as an extra defenders, meaning when you press from central areas, that sideline will limit the ball carrier's options more so than if the player was like in the middle of the pitch or like received the ball in a central area. You wouldn't on the sidelines, you wouldn't have as many options in the middle, right? And we saw this during the game. Nashville wanted Lima and Kolmanek to run out of options and then force the ball forward and with a long ball. And we saw this a lot during the game, and they would lose possession this way as well. And lastly here, I kind of want to touch on Nashville's high line when they pressed, especially when the pressing trap triggered in the final third. This ensured that the team's shape remained like intact and compressed the space behind Austin's midfielders to kind of, control the pitch and force them to play in certain areas. But I think the key here for Nashville is that the backline read the game really well and they were able to drop off when Austin played long balls. So that's why you barely saw them get caught out of possession. And this is something that I think Oscar talked about in his preview coming into this game. This Nashville side is a very good defensive team. Gary Smith knows how to play or how to organize a team to not be as vulnerable in the back. And with that on top of like a very good pressing system that force Austin to play in a way they don't want to, I think those are the main reasons why in the first half, Nashville just dominated the game. I was a little upset with Nashville kind of like going away from this system in the second half. And that's why we saw Austin create a lot more chances. But unfortunately, they continue to struggle in the final third. And that's even though they did create a lot more chances in the second half, they couldn't come away with a point from that game.
Yeah, I like how you brought up and talked about the kind of pressing system that they were using. Because it's obvious that like teams that are pressing against the teams are pressing against Austin FC because they kind of know that when they get pressed, they'll end up making the mistakes, which has led to them getting good shots on their goal. We saw that in their last game against LA Galaxy and the game that. But and then I think Nashville is very comfortable with. It seemed like they were very comfortable with just sitting back and absorbing that kind of attack from Austin. I don't know if it was the right thing to do, but obviously they had confidence in playing that way because of the amount of goals they've allowed and the amount of shutouts they've had this season so far. So, but it won't get any easier for Austin next week when they have to play Seattle. I think an even better team who's very comfortable without having the ball and on the ball and being playing extremely well in transition. So, yeah, it was. I think that to kind of reiterate to what kind of Josh Wolff was saying in his press conference, I think they like these results, these losses. They it should not deviate from how they want to play, because like playing on the road is difficult for teams in the MLS, just in general. And the fact that they're having to play 8 in a row before they even play their first home game, so that's going to be a very, very tough 8 games for them, and the opponents are very good. So, I mean, they just can't let these losses get to them, which is I think it's easier said than done, and I don't think won't happen because it seemed like when Nashville had scored their goal, or like when an opponent has scored a goal on them, their life just gets sucked out of them. Like their mentality and their energy, you can just tell that their energy levels just kind of just drop substantially more than what it was before the goal had been scored. So they're not that mentally strong yet. So I think obviously they're going to be feeling the pressure of not getting wins. But I think what Wolf needs to do is kind of be that person to let them know, like, hey, like what you're doing, how you start, what schedule you're being faced with to start off the season is quite difficult. And you need to not focus so much on that. We just need to focus on getting better as a team and playing better in the system we want to play, which is easier said than done. But that's your job as a coach, is to motivate your players, get them through these tough times. And we'll see.
If you don't mind, you actually brought up the point I wanted to make later on, but you hit it right now. Against Seattle, we touched on it on the preview for the Nashville game, maybe the recap for the Nashville game, and we'll touch on it for the preview for Seattle. They're the best team in the league, like Sylvia just said. They outscored, last I checked, I think that's excluding the very last game they played, 13-2. Haven't lost a game. They beat Atlanta United, who's a top team in the league, completely. Like, you couldn't even tell it was Atlanta United with Joseph Martinez and company. I as much hope as I have for Austin next weekend against Seattle, the likelihood of Seattle opening up the scoreline is very high. And Javi just brought up a great point. Every time they've gone down, excluding the game against Colorado, which is the first win they've ever had, they've pretty much shut down. Although they played better most of the time, it can be attributed more to the opposition sitting back than Wolff kind of like motivating some sort of play in his system. And I don't think Wolff has like I would say like a plan B or a backup plan once the team goes down a goal or more. Like we saw it against LA Galaxy. There was just no plan. There was no game plan. It was kind of a lot of long balls. Once Mane came in, it changed a little bit, but there was really no identity or like change in identity once they went down. And I don't think it's worked out for them throughout the 6 games they played. They've been down 4. No, they've been down every single game they've won, excluding the Minnesota game, and every single game they played. So I think for most teams, like for the Dynamo, for Dallas, you start to see them start tweaking things when they're down and when they want to come back. Not the MLS, but you saw that for Kansas City against the Houston Dash last weekend. There was a clear intent to come back and win the game, and we haven't seen that from Austin. So what do y'all think Austin should be doing once they get down? What type of changes should they be making? Not just like personnel changes, because he does make that, but I see the same game plan. There's no real like increase in energy or anything like that.
That's like there's so many ways you can attack that question. I mean, what can they do differently? I mean, one thing is don't hang your head. I mean, you're down 1-0. But obviously I think what like physically what they could do differently, which they haven't, which I wish they would start doing, is kind of getting more creative in the final third. And I just don't think that they're that creative yet in the final third. They get so many shots up, but very few on target. So I just think that this kind of chemistry on like building on like where players, and I've said this before, like where players will make the runs and stuff like that, being more creative in your runs and knowing people's movements, that will come in due time. But I just wish that they would be more creative in that final third. And I think if they were, I feel like it wouldn't be so hard. It wouldn't be so easy to hang their head, because they knew, okay, well, we just went down. We can come back and we know we can score. But the thing is that they haven't scored in the past 2 games. So I feel like they're kind of like they're not confident in their ability to score. They don't have all that confidence when they're putting up shots. So I think once they break that drought, of not scoring in the past 2 games. Um, Hopefully their confidence will come back, but man, I it yeah, I just wish they had more confidence in and more creativity in the way they played. Because then I feel like if they did, then they wouldn't be so quick to hang their head when they go down. Because I feel like when they do that, you just make it easier for you just make it easier for yourself to get pulled out the game, like, as in, like, you just, like, give up the game like that. Like, you need to be you need to react even harder than how you were before the game. So now you're down 1-0. And I know it's hard. I know it's easier said than done. I mean, these aren't teams from Europe, but they're not technically as gifted as those players from Europe. But I mean, still, like, keep fighting. And I think one of the things that's like hard, and one of the things that was kind of bugging me too was, and I kept seeing that. I kept telling myself, I was like, every time, I don't know whether it was Pochettino who lost the ball or someone named Pochettino lost the ball. It just feels like his work rates for defense are just like could come back are just like so slow. Like he doesn't like run when like the team's like just sprinting down the field. He's just like, oh, okay, well, I'm not gonna go back. Like I'm just gonna let the and he could lose the ball in his own half. When he loses the ball, he's not like chasing the ball after. So it's like there needs to be that energy, that intensity to want the ball, to get the ball back after you lose the possession. Because I think that's it all starts with that, your energy levels and your intensity levels. And I think but I think like teams notice that when they go down 1-0, they just they just fall like, and they give up on themselves. I don't know where to give up themselves, and they have to wait till halftime, so then they can get lifted back up again, and then have some more play with a little bit more intensity. But it shouldn't have to be like that. They need to be, and I could see Ring like yelling at them, telling them like pick up, like come on, like press the ball and press more, or, stop making all these mistakes or something. You see the man yelling, but it's just it takes a whole team to be able to pull that off and to be able to rely on each other. I think um, there just has to. I don't know whether he has to go to the bench and find players who want to play, whether it be that. But yeah, that's it. So to make a long answer out of your question, I think it just starts with having more confidence in their play. Um, and when you have more confidence, you'll be less inclined, I feel like, to hang your head after you go down 1-0. Because if you have more confidence in yourself, and you believe that you can come back and you can get a result out of this game, then you wouldn't be so down on yourself when you do go down a goal.
Uh, I
Yeah.
I think for me,
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry for stepping in there, but I think for me, well, first to go back to the pressing, the Nashville pressing, I need to give a shout out to Eric Lowry on Twitter who made like this really nice graphic about it. If you guys are interested, just check out his Twitter and you'll see like a great like little um you know illustration of exactly what I'm talking about and how Nashville shut down Austin. But that also kind of translated a little bit to my point here, and is that Austin normally go down in games where they're not playing well, obviously. And when aren't they playing well? When they're not allowed to progress forward with the ball. And that's normally because they're being pressed in this high 4-4-2 block that really tries to shut down the middle of the pitch. Having Alex Ring most of the time being the sole holding midfielder is an issue. Look, he's a great player, no doubt. He's probably one of the better technical players on this Austin side, but we still have to realize that just because he's one of the better technical players doesn't mean that he can easily, get through other people's presses. He had probably the worst game I've seen against Nashville. He got shut down completely. So what I would like to see from Austin, and there has been glimpses of them doing this when they do try to press trap or have a 4-4-2 pressing trap like on the middle of the field, is that they normally drop Fagundes as a second pivot. And traditionally, when you do bring a second pivot, you don't think of it as like an attack, like something synonymous with like attacking style football. But I think this could be something that could help them avoid going down early, is that second pivot. Not only will it, like I said, allow them to not concede a goal because they won't easily lose the ball to press, but it'll also allow them to progress forward with the ball And that's when we see Austin at their best. And in the second half of that Nashville game, when they were given time and space and able to build up and get the ball into the final third with, they were able to get into the final third with the ball at their feet. That's when we saw most of, their better chances in the game happen. So I think for me, that's kind of the biggest change I'd like to see is when they are struggling with the press, something has to change in that midfield. And I think bringing in another player along with Ring to help them there could be a key.
And first of all, you gotta give my boy Theo credit for that. Come on. On the Twitter where you replied to his tweet.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, that actually you got to give credit to Tom Bogart because I think. Oh no, not Tom. Carlson, your boy Carlson. That's who brought it up.
Carpenter.
Yeah, I saw it like 2 weeks ago on Twitter. I don't know if they did that the whole game, but that's like I think he got a good instance or a good like snapshot of the game where they were able to beat that press like I think once or a couple times, and exactly they dropped Fagundes in as a second pivot, and they didn't do that at all with Nashville because they played with I think Pereira instead of Fagundes. I might be mistaken there. Yeah, and I haven't seen too much of him, to just like acquire a good like player profile on him, but I think Fagundes would be better if you want to bring someone a little deeper to help with the build up. So yeah, they didn't do that in the first half, and I mean they suffered against that press, man. They got completely wrecked by it.
Yeah, I mean the biggest concern I specifically to the next game is that offensively, I don't think. I mean, Seattle's going to press them, right? I think they have the highest pressing out of anyone, right? But even not just the volume, the quality's there. And I don't think, even with the pressing, if you look at like previous Seattle games, they haven't left the same gaps other high pressing teams have left, like the Dynamo, for example. They cover their spaces really well. So I think the long ball is the worst way to go against Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully I'm proven wrong, but I just don't think it's going to work out. Yeah. Now, let's say Wolff deviates a little bit. He's like, okay, the long ball's not going to work. Let's try to do like slow down the tempo a little bit. I don't think Austin knows what to do with the ball, like when you slow down the play. Personal opinion. If you see most of the goals they've scored, quick counter, it's like money ball, long ball. You know what I mean? Like it works out. It's all reliable. Once you slow down, it doesn't work out. And against a Seattle team, I feel like that's what they should be, I guess, like practicing, seeing what they can do. And I think finding a new role for Hosen that's likely going to start, right? I don't think he should be playing super deep against Seattle because, like you mentioned, like against Nashville, I feel like they're just going to get stuck in the mid third. I think they're going to need players like Gallagher, Redes, or Stroud that are a little bit more dynamic. Can create a little bit more, and again maybe have Dominguez up top. But assuming Hosen plays, they're gonna need Fagundes, like you mentioned. I don't think Pereira is the best shout against Seattle. And then defensively, Lima gets caught off guard a little bit too often. And against a team like Seattle that doesn't even need the counter, like if you saw against Atlanta United, like they slowly chipped away at the defense. Like they don't need the quick counter. They're a team that can beat you in any way, shape, or form. So I'd like to see the fullbacks drop a little bit more, and that would kind of negate the long ball strategy they've used all season. But it'll be interesting to see how he handles it or whether he just sticks with it and believes in it completely.
Yeah, quick. I don't know if this is a hot take, but basically my analysis or my critique of the Austin system as it's worked right now, right? And quickly before I talk about like Seattle Sounders and the game against Austin this upcoming weekend, I think everything that happens going up to the final third, you can blame on Josh Wolff. Like the pressing against Nashville and over 40 minutes not being able to like crack the equation and solve that problem, 100% that's on the manager's shoulder. Now, the issue of final third quality and finishing, that's on the players completely. And that's kind of my take here. Everything, when they struggle to get the ball into the final third, I think Josh Wolff needs to figure out what's going on in the game and make real-time solutions. Up top, Wolff's job is to get them there if you're going to play this style. And then it comes down to the players. And we've seen, sparks of brilliance here or there, but we're going to need to see it more if this Austin team, wishes to push for a playoff spot. But anyways,
well,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Question there before we move on. So I completely agree that it's on the players to get to the final, once they get to the final third, to be dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying you said this, but I don't believe Josh Wolff has gotten them to the final third the way he wants them to get to the final
absolutely.
third. Because if it was for Wolff, it'd be Dominguez one-on-one against some dude, and it'd be like a little bit easier for him. But whenever they get to the one-on-one, just to point it out, it's like Dominguez, Hosen in the center, 3 center backs in there, and they just do the long cross that usually doesn't work out, or they try to recycle it, lose the ball, and we start over. So I do think Josh Wolff has not gotten it, and I'm not saying you didn't. You said he did, but I just want to point out that I think we got to start from there.
No, that's exactly what happened in this Nashville game. That's literally exactly what happened. The first half, they couldn't get there with the ball. So Josh Wolff's plan failed. In the second half, you didn't need Josh Wolff's plan because Nashville let them get there on their own. They could have 2-3 passes and get there. But like you said, at that time, they have 4 defenders. Hosen, that's probably not going to create anything given recent trends. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. You're never going to get that Cecilia one-on-one unless Wolff improves his system, getting them to that final third, setting his players up for success. And then once you get there, if the players can't score or if they're kind of missing that quality that you need, then you can completely put that on the players.
But it's funny that I'm in complete agreement, right? Mm-hmm. And out of all players that they have, I would say the way they're getting to the final third, right? With a lot of men in the box, hard to get through. Hosen's the least likely player to do anything with that. If anything, I would see him better. Kind of like Urruti will get the long through ball, and he's quick enough, not necessarily super pacey, but he's quick enough to make something out of it. He has enough technique to make something out of it. That's what we would need from Hosen, but he's just not that same player. I'm not saying he's worse in terms of caliber or technique. It's just a different style that's just not suited for the Wolves. Okay, maybe he's suited for Wolves' ideal system, but not for the system that's actually coming out. So it's funny that we keep seeing him day in, day out.
I'm surprised. I'm still surprised he's getting the nod. I mean, Wolff must see something in the training ground or just has complete confidence in him, which is nice to see. But sooner or later, he's gonna have to put on a performance for the fans and for his gaffer.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Quickly, my little take on the Sounders before we give our game prediction. I think the key for the game is for Austin to limit Raul Rudias, who leads the league in both expected goals and non-penalty expected goals. He also has 6 total goals to his name this season, just sitting behind Chicharito Hernandez, the MLS's top goal scorer so far. So that's going to be something that, or a player that Austin really needs to limit, his impact on the game. Now, quickly, stylistically, I think Seattle tends to not press as high as we saw Nashville do this past weekend. They only press the attacking third 18% of the time. This would allow, Austin to, get to the final third or a little higher up on the pitch without too much pressure. And throughout the season, we've seen their better moments when they are allowed to comfortably build up. But with that said, Seattle, like Oscar pointed out too, they're not a bad pressing side. They have the league's, I think, 5th best pressing success rate. But they just kind of decide to have their initial line of engagement around the mid-third. That's the only difference. I wouldn't be surprised though if they completely grab Nashville's playbook because it works so well. But don't think because they don't press so high that they're not a good pressing side.
I think they're a better pressing side for not needing to go that deep because then, like when you've seen most like pressing sides, they kind of overextend a little bit too much.
Yeah,
kind of like Minnesota, for example, Houston at times. And the way they do it, they really minimize risk, which is impressive because not everyone can do so.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why they have the most points and currently sit at the top of the Western Conference. All right, you guys, anything else to add on the Seattle v Austin game?
I do not.
Yeah, I just think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just.
It's gonna be a tough one.
It is. It's gonna be tough, and and what's funny is you say that they probably won't. That they have like a tendency to like kind of sit back and they play well. They don't need the ball to win, but they can also when they need possession, they'll get it and they can move the ball around. But it'll be funny if they just show up and they just start pressing Austin like those the first 45 minutes because they know that Austin isn't comfortable like being pressed and
I
playing
feel
out the
like
back.
if that happens, then it's so obvious that like Wolff needs to,
he's gonna have to do something. He's gonna.
It's just the way he's setting this up tactically is. I'm not saying what he wants to do is not working. I'm saying the way he's doing it isn't working.
Yeah, he must be like it must be like where he's wanting the players positioned, or maybe there's not. Maybe they're so eager to go up, or what it is. But yeah, I mean, he was talking about in his press conference. He just wishes that his players were like they were more
Xavi Iniesta.
Patient.
Just kidding.
No, not Xavi Iniesta.
I mean, if you give me Xavi Iniesta in the MLS, I'll win your games too. Like easy.
No, he was just saying that he wishes they were they were a little more patient, and then kind of don't always have to look for that cross. Always try to work it back into the middle, and then when you work it back into the middle, kind of don't lose it because it's at that point. A lot of those times they try to work it back into the top of the midfield, like that midpoint between the goal and the halfway line, where they'll lose the ball, and then their center backs will be left there 2v3, just stranded, or 2v2. And as we saw, their center backs aren't ones that are comfortable to be in one-on-one situations. So yeah, I just think they like he needs to, if it's him not positioning them right, he needs to position them in certain areas where when they do recycle it, kind of back to Ring or to Pereira or somebody, there always has to be support. Because I feel like there's many times where there's just not support for the player who has the ball. They're either in the middle, in the box, waiting for the service, or they're like down the line, too far from the player. And which is fine. I mean, if you want to play the service, then I mean, obviously you would want to put Stroud in because that man can put some good crosses in there. You wouldn't be starting Redis. But I mean, if you're wanting to play this kind of patient possession ball, and you want to be a team that has the ball before and have control of the game before you go down the goal, then you would need to kind of set up your players correctly, or keep telling your players, these are the positions you need to be in, or put in the players who will listen to where they're supposed to be, and not be, so eager to play the way they want to play, just going down the line or getting in the box, something like that. So yeah, it's going to be tough for them because this is going to test, how creative they can be in that opponent's final third, and we know that they haven't really been that creative. It's been kind of just been predictable, kind of stale stuff, stale runs, and like I said, and like you said, Seattle's going to be a team that, if we've seen that they can sit back and they'll just sit in that block and they'll do fine. When they do get the ball back, they're really, really good off in transition. So yeah, it's gonna be tough for Austin.
Given that, what do you think the score prediction is gonna be on Sunday?
I'm gonna say 3-1 Seattle.
3-1 Seattle. Oscar?
I say they go down early.
Yeah.
I say Austin go down early, and after that, it's just It'll be 2 goals, and then Austin get 1, and then Seattle
Yeah,
will
I
get
could
another
see.
one.
I could see that. Oscar.
I would say 2-0 Seattle. I feel like after they score, Seattle is going to just chill out like Nashville.
Yeah. Oh,
But
or do you think they kind of just because I was thinking like 4-0, like they just go in there and they just make a statement out of this game to not only the rest of the league but to Austin fans saying let's come down a little bit. We're the big team around here in the Western
I want to make
Conference.
sure you have something decent to write about, but if that's what you want, you do you, man. I'm not gonna stop you.
I don't know. It's
Hey, he's saying this now, but like if that happens, like he's gonna be like, Oscar, what do I write? I'm like, hey, you wished upon the soccer gods.
I'm
for
just
this to
saying
happen.
I could see it happen. I'd rather have like a nice score of like 3-1. That sounds nice. Austin get like a consolation goal.
I just want Fagundes to score, please.
That would
Thank
be
you.
nice. But yeah, I could see them going down early. I'm thinking like around 3-1, 4-0, that around there for me.
Do you think we all agreed that this is a likely loss, right?
Yeah.
Before we head out.
Most likely.
How do you see the team kind of like bouncing back from this?
I think fine. I think fine. I think you can't like you're on the end, you're on the home stretch of this like long road trip going up against like the league's scariest team at the moment. So I think they just need to focus on putting a good performance and really kind of working out their quote unquote kinks like we wrote about in the recap.
NSFW, man.
Dude, I got ratioed on that. You got more upvotes.
I always look for ways to embarrass Sylvia.
Oh my god, I got ratioed on Reddit. That's beside the point though. All right. Are we ready to call this one, boys?
Yes.
All right. Oscar, let's quickly put our Twitters out there, guys. Where can people find you on Twitter?
OJ Aguilar 16.
Okay, Javi.
Adame_Hav.
And you guys can find me at SPrietoJR on Twitter. Also, make sure to visit the Final Third Pod website, finalthirdpod.com. You guys will find all our blogs there, MLS blogs, dash blogs. You guys can find our podcast episodes there, or pretty much every other podcast platform out there. But make sure to like, subscribe, and rate the podcast. It really helps us out. We also just came out with a newsletter, so if you guys want to sign up for that, just put your email and you will get emails when we post updates on the league, your recaps, your previews, your podcasts, all that good stuff will be directly in your email. So sign up for that. And yeah, thank you to all the listeners for listening. And hopefully we will catch you all in the next one. Peace.